Hi, my name's Daryl. I run a landscape design studio called YardFarmer.co, and today we're designing a sustainable landscape using 100% Maryland native plants for a project that we're installing later this summer. At YardFarmer, we always provide the client with a conceptual drawing first. This is squiggles and vibes, really visual, just helping the client get an idea of all of the design elements and the layout in their yard. We'll iterate with the client a few times on that. Once that's approved, we'll do a complete architectural style site plan for them, but right now what you're watching are the beginning stages of a conceptual drawing. The first step of the process is to roughly sketch out the major design elements. So this is not final by any means. We just know that there's swampiness on the south side of the house where water pools. We know where the deck is going to go. We know where existing trees are. So we're mapping out all of the design elements that we know we're going to need to either incorporate or work around first, and that will help us make important design decisions. This property, it's in Silver Spring, Maryland, and the homeowners were able to get 11 native trees through a government program that provided discounted native trees. And I wish that all municipalities provided this because it just makes my heart sing. So we already know that we need to incorporate these existing trees into the design. We're making note of them here. Beyond those existing 11 trees, we really got to let our imaginations run wild with this landscape. It's a completely blank slate with very little existing hardscape or major factors. We'll play with the layouts and stay very loose and flexible with the shapes until something really stands out on the page and just feels right. And then we'll solidify it and start building on it into the design from there. The client will never see this. Well, I guess in this case, the client will see this because we're recording it. But in general, this is the roughest of rough drafts until we have a general idea of what we're doing. And then boom, we can start fresh and begin drawing out the design in earnest. We're designing this yard to meet all of the criteria to become a certified wildlife habitat with the National Wildlife Federation. We're outlining what areas of the yard will be key habitat areas for wildlife, what areas will be for people, what areas will be for the furry friends who live in the house to use, and so on. We're going to try to keep some general separation from areas that pets use and wildlife habitat because we don't want to distress the birds, bees, and butterflies. We like to keep those just a little bit delineated. This yard's going to consist of 100% Maryland native plants, which will be provided by our friends and environmental superstars at Garden for Wildlife. And this is going to provide key habitat, food, cover, and so on for birds, bees, butterflies, even bats. We will be housing some bats on the property because mosquitoes are a huge issue in this yard in particular, and bat houses will attract the bats. Bats eat tens of thousands of mosquitoes per night. It's a really easy way to integrate pest management into a sustainable design. So now at this point, we're feeling a little more confident about where everything is going. We've settled on this organic, irregularly shaped patio off of the back of the house with the fire pit filling out this southernmost end that extends further away from the home. And we also know that we're going to be doing a tiered rain garden on the southernmost end of the house in order to accommodate and fix that water pooling and bogginess that they're experiencing. So from here, because we know where these key elements are going to be throughout the yard, we need to design the flow of traffic between them. If you imagine your yard like a floor plan, the pathways can be the hallways, and then these major design elements can be the rooms, and how those things connect and flow together really form the skeleton and the bones of any sustainable landscape design. Another thing we need to keep in mind in a sustainable landscape design is the topography of the landscape and how water moves through it. So you can see these faint gray squiggles that cross the entire image diagonally. Those are contour lines, each representing a decrease in elevation. And we're making sure that if we're putting any rain gardens or bioswales or depressions in the topography, places where water is going to intentionally collect, we're making sure we do so on contour. So then when water flows down a slope perpendicular to a contour line, we know that those depressions in the soil that we're making will be able to catch the water and allow for more soil absorption. So instead of the water pooling where we don't want it to pool, it will pool where we do want it to pool and be absorbed by rain garden, water-loving Maryland native plants. You can see here we're also noting the visibility triangle. That's the area on this corner lot that we need to keep free from tall plants in order to maintain safe driving conditions. Usually pretty much everywhere, but you want to check with your city. It's 50 feet back from the corner in both directions that you want to avoid planting anything that could block sight lines from passing cars. So we are planting out this yard with 100% Maryland native plants. that we're sourcing from Garden for Wildlife. And the larger circles that we're drawing in this case will be the shrubs. We're doing Carolina rose shrubs, a bunch of azaleas like pink azalea, swamp azalea, sweet azalea. I think there's coastal azalea also. We're going to be planting a whole lot of them, and we'll finalize their placement at the end once we know the entire bones of this design. So the circles are representing shrubs, and any crisscrosses that you see us draw into the design are going to represent closely planted groups of perennials. So we're designing this Maryland yard to be a native wildlife habitat that will be certified through the National Wildlife Federation. And so it's our job as designers to make sure that all of the requirements for that certification are incorporated into the design. That includes 3 sources of food, 1 source of water, 2 places to raise young, 2 places for animals to take shelter or cover, and at least 2 requirements. There's a list that they provide that sustainable practices are being used to maintain the yard. That can be things like protecting the soil using mulch, managing invasives, managing your water use, and so on. So as we're designing this, we're actually color coding the different requirements to make sure they're all included. Highlighted in light green will be the food sources that we are making sure we're including for wildlife. Birds need things like nuts and seeds and berries, and pollinators need nectar. And we're specifically going to be using the collections from Garden for Wildlife in order to include just this huge amount of pollinator supporting plants. They have a monarch munchables collection that has native milkweed in it. So again, all of these are going in order to provide these critical food sources. These collections are pre-designed to be native to your specific area. So these Maryland native plant collections have things like foxglove beard tongue and eastern columbine, black-eyed Susan. It's going to be really colorful, and we're going to make sure that things are really densely planted so they can also serve the purpose of providing shelter as well. In blue, you'll see the areas we mapped for water sources. Now, there are rain gardens and bioswales going on this property to control the flow of water through the yard. However, rain gardens aren't really consistent sources of water because the plants will be absorbing them and water will only show up during rain events. So we're also making sure to include a bird bath just to provide consistent access to water regardless of if it's raining or not. In dark green, you'll see areas where we make sure wildlife can shelter. The mature tree on the south side of the property will definitely be creating shelter for birds, and then we're also making sure to densely plant those perennials like I mentioned before to provide shelter throughout the yard. Okay, playtime is over, kids. The sketching is done and we are cleaning up and finalizing all of the major shapes. We are going to do a staggered flagstone pathway that feels flowing and organic, nothing too separate from nature. Even so, the pathways closest to the home will be a little more formal and substantial, and then we'll let them get smaller and less formal the further out from the house they go. So here you see all the bones of the design are in place. The structures, the hardscape, the trees, the rain garden, the contour swales, all of it. So this is where it gets fun. Let's get the fire pit area in place and solidify the back patio as the primary social space for the humans to enjoy in this yard. Right off the back patio, we're going to step into a vegetable garden. And I really do like kitchen gardens and vegetable gardens to be as close to the house and the patio as possible. Because if you are inside cooking and you just need 4 sprigs of basil and a cherry tomato in order to make your dinner perfect, you don't want to have to go on a hike to the furthermost corner of your yard in order to access those veggies. So I do always put gardens within quick, easy access of a back door if possible. This brown square up by the back shed, that's going to be their composting area. All the biomass from pruning the plants in their yard, the vegetable scraps, food scraps while they're cooking, all of that's going here in order to create new soil, closing a loop so that hopefully they won't have to import soil every year in order to feed and nourish their plants. So let's talk about rain gardens. This yard has 2 bioswales. You can see them right here and right here. These are basically little trenches, depressions in the soil that we've cut directly on contour. You can see that they line up really nicely with these contour lines that are representing that decrease in elevation that we were talking about. Now, swales are not water features. There's not water constantly moving through these. They are just allowing for that soil absorption and preventing runoff. These are also amazing places to plant rain garden plants. These are native plants that can maybe tolerate a little bit of drought, but at the end of the day, they're going to love having more access to water by being strategically placed at a lower point in the elevation, therefore in one of these trenches. And every time water goes down the slope, that's where the water's going to catch the most. And those rain garden plants are going to stabilize the soil and drink that water right up. We're planting plants from the rain garden collection from Garden for Wildlife. This is a pre-designed set of water-loving plants. So if you have a place where water is pooling, this makes that very straightforward about what to plant there. In this case, for Maryland, it's swamp milkweed, crucial for monarchs, love to see it, sneezeweed, hilarious name always, great blue lobelia, and golden alexander. And if I haven't said it enough, please let the record show I'm genuinely obsessed with these plant collections because they group the native plants, not only that look good together, but also that have similar water needs. So it really just kind of makes it a no-brainer about what to plant where. And I love that for us, I really do. One thing this yard is absolutely not gonna lack for is biodiversity, because we're talking hundreds of plants, all native to Maryland, all absolutely crucial for the native birds, bees, butterflies, the wildlife that will really benefit from urban and suburban conservation efforts just like this one. This project is being installed in just a few weeks, so be sure to follow along. We're going to be taking you with us to see how it goes.